Okay, well, thank you for our second session. We're so excited to have you all. For those of you who don't know me, I know we keep doing this each week, but I'm Marie McNamara. I am the program manager. We're so excited for today's session. I've really enjoyed learning more about these great organizations, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. So, a big shout out to the 14 new members we have who joined us this year. So we're we're welcoming you here, whether you're seasoned and joining us again. We're grateful you made space here for this important work. The new people here, you're part of this really growing group of passionate women who are committed to making a real impact for women and girls in Greater Hartford. We are all about collective giving and collective learning and doing it with a big heart. So as you have read, there's no minimum to join, whether you give $1 or $1,000. Every member has the same voice, the same vote. 100% of our Giving Circle donations go directly to the nonprofits doing this life-changing work. There's no complicated grant applications, just trust, care, and direct impact. Each organization that's been joining us for this session will really receive at least $2,500, and then additional funds raised will be voted on in our in-person lunch on June 4th at the Mandel JCC. If you haven't RSVP'd for that lunch yet, just reply to one of the many emails that I have sent you. I know you see many, but if I'm being honest, sometimes my inbox is also my to-do list. So I'm hoping that that's helpful to you. If not, just scroll through. Beyond the dollars raised, we also give, what we think is pretty special is that we give our time, our networks, our audience, and our commitment to these orgs. It's how Aurora has operated for 25 years. We're not just funders, we're conveners, which does remind me, speaking of connection, we don't just gather here or at big events like our Luminary event in October. A few times a year, I host a coffee and convening, which Jenny spoke of briefly at our last session. These are virtual meetups where local nonprofits working on behalf of women and girls come together to collaborate. I would certainly welcome the orgs that are here with us today. We share resources, we spark partnerships. It's casual, but it's pretty powerful. It's a safe space to lift up for those programs on what's working, but really just as importantly, to talk about what's not working. In fact, that's how this idea for this year's Giving Circle came about at our January meeting. Even organizations that were not directly serving immigrant families, they were seeing the ripple effects of the fear and disconnection and the needs. So our next coffee and convening session is coming up on June 6th at 10 on Zoom. So if you're part of a local organization or if you're another funder with resources to share and would like to come into this space and hear what the challenges are, please reach out to me. We know that real change doesn't happen in silos. It happens with community. So get in touch with me. So where we are today, we have 58 Giving Circle members and have raised over $28,000. Woohoo! Up from 21,000 last week. So thank you. We're closing in on, last year we raised 30, so we're closing in on that to be divided between the 4 organizations. So that is definitely worth celebrating. We continue taking donations through that June meeting. So if you haven't pledged yet or made your gift yet, as long as it's before that June 4th meeting so that we know how much money we have. And I will do a quick recap. Last week, we heard from Tabitha Sukdiko, Executive Director of Connecticut Students for a Dream. Although I got emotional, it was also very eye-opening. Some key takeaways is that Tabitha shared the deep emotional toll that immigration policies are taking on women, avoiding food pantries, not reporting abuse out of fear, not getting medical attention. So when we ask to answer where would the Giving Circle dollars go within Students for a Dream, one top priority is creating a centralized legal intake and referral system across Connecticut. This is so community organizations can connect people to legal support more efficiently. And then another was expanding the pro se, which I had to look that up, means representing yourself in court without a lawyer. So expanding clinics across underserved areas. She mentioned like the northwest corner of the state. Clinics to provide legal guidance, childcare, interpretation, pro bono, paid legal help. These volunteer attorneys are stretched very thin, and they deserve some support. So she also reminded us that simple things like offering to drive someone to court, helping them with childcare, sitting next to them when they're waiting. These are just things we can do to offer dignity and presence in moments that really matter. So we will continue to share all the information on how to get involved in my many emails. You can also watch the recording. And next week is Feeding Hope and Fueling Change. That is Jendiah Scott Miller from Angel of Edgewood. She is a force. You are definitely going to want to tune in as well. And then on June 4th, like I said, is the lunch. So I will, if you haven't officially joined, you can go to our website. I will now turn it over to Jenny, if I can figure out how to unpin myself. There you go.
Good. That works. Great. Thank you so much, Marie, for your fabulous work on this, as ever. So I really want to get us to our fabulous guest today. I felt like last week was so powerful, and the only thing that I'll add to Marie's summary is I really took away the way that Tabitha was framing the immigrant and refugee women that we're talking about as contributors to all of our community and society in Connecticut, particularly when she talked about just how much undocumented folks pay in taxes, right? Like they are, right, not a drain on us, but active contributors. And so I think that's important for us to frame the issue that way. So I am thrilled to welcome our first speaker today, Mary Elizabeth Smith, or ME, is the co-deputy director at Make the Road, where she leads a team of development, operations, communications, and program staff. I am fascinated that she pursued her master's in human rights in Buenos Aires, Argentina, at the, my Spanish is so bad, Universidad Popular de la Madre de la Plaza de Mayo, an alternative university founded by the mothers of the disappeared. I would love sometime to meet for us to learn more about that. She has worked on building educational opportunities and advocacy in both Bolivia and New Haven. So we're thrilled to welcome her.
You did great. You did wonderful. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for having me today. As Jennifer said, I'm ME. Full name is Mary Elizabeth. I'm one of the co-deputy directors at Make the Road Connecticut. I would have loved to have my executive director here today as well, but she's actually on vacation, a well-deserved vacation. So you have me today, and I did bring a few slides. It's pretty brief, but would love to kind of, engage in questions and conversation with you all if you have it. Okay, so I might see my screen now. Wonderful. All right, so Make the Road Connecticut is an organization that was founded in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 2015 and expanded to Hartford in 2018. I myself have been with the organization since 2017, so know a lot about the history and context of the work that we've been doing. I've also been a friend and co-conspirator of Constanza Segovia, who is the second presenter on this call. And so I feel really blessed to be sharing this space with her. I think that, as was already mentioned, this work does not happen in silos. We all depend on each other. And it's really sort of special to be invited to a space where somebody who I really trust and rely on for the work that we do is also here. So just want to appreciate that. Make the Road Connecticut is a member-led community organization working to build power in immigrant, Latinx, and working class communities in Connecticut. Like I said, we were founded in Bridgeport. One of our main offices in Bridgeport, but obviously because of Aurora Foundation's focus on Hartford, I will focus on Hartford today. We do have an office in Hartford, and we have staff in Hartford that's there full-time working to build power in our Hartford community. The majority of our community members that we work with are women. They are immigrant women and Latina women, predominantly mothers who have come to us because either they didn't understand the language that information was coming home to them from their kids' schools, or they had an immigration case, or they were trying to get healthcare and didn't know how to access healthcare. So there's a lot of different ways that folks kind of walk in our door. And our work is really about organizing and building power. So we don't offer services in the traditional way of sort of like sitting down and being able to fill out paperwork with folks, although there is some amount of that we've started to do in terms of helping folks with Husky applications and things like that. But the bread and butter of our work is really community organizing and working together to make change. Our core issue areas are listed here. Immigration is one that we see as kind of transecting all of the other areas, right? Nobody really comes into our office and says, I only have a housing issue or I only have a healthcare issue. Most folks are dealing with a series of issues that could be they're undocumented. They don't understand the information that's coming home from their kids' schools. They are in eviction proceedings, and they also need access to healthcare, right? So a lot of our community members are sort of engaging in these different core issue areas. So it's not bucketed in a really like solid or formal way, but those do tend to be the areas that we focus on. Democracy is a bit of a new one. We have always done a bit of sort of civic engagement, trying to get folks more aware of and interested in some of the local election work, but it's always under our C3 hat, and it's something that we are sort of building upon. So I would say that's kind of one of our newer issue areas. How do we do the work? So as I mentioned before, organizing the community to make change. We do this through a committee model, which means that in Hartford, we have 4 active committees. We have a healthcare committee, a housing committee, an education committee, and a workers' rights committee. And those committees are made up of different community members. They meet on a weekly basis, and folks gather to talk about the issues that are most pressing, that are most pertinent to them, and figure out how to shift power, how to shift the balance, how to make some amount of change. So when we say our work is community-led or member-led, the members are really the ones who are making decisions on which campaigns we work on, which issues we work on. One of our first campaigns that we won historically was a language access campaign called In Our Language Please, and it was because the mothers who were coming in were saying, we don't understand, we're going to these IEPs, to these meetings at our kids' schools, and we're not getting translation, we're not getting interpretation. So the issues that come out of the community. We also have a leaders council. So there is an amount of kind of co-leadership within our organization where our leaders council works with our staff and our directors to make decisions about sort of programmatic stuff, campaign stuff, strategic planning work, sort of where a traditional board would sit in. Our leaders council actually does a lot of that work, fundraising. They do a lot of fundraising with me, which is awesome. I have a couple of our active campaigns here. These are all our statewide campaigns. So Husky for Immigrants and Fighting to Strengthen Hospital Financial Assistance Programs. We have the Just Cause of Eviction Protections, strengthening the Connecticut Trust Act, and expanding voting rights. I can go into more detail on all of those campaigns. I also recognize we're out of time. You know, we only have a limited amount of time, so I'm going to move through, and then if there's more questions, I will be happy to answer them. I know that Tabitha spoke to you all last week, and I'm sure that she covered a lot of this stuff. I'm also not an attorney. I'm not a policy expert, and so I don't pretend to like do any sort of big, you know, a deep dive into what is happening with immigration right now. But I think some of the things that we are seeing that have been really impactful for our community, we've seen an increase in ICE arrests, particularly at courthouses in the state of Connecticut, at least is what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of courthouse arrests. We're seeing a lot of folks and hearing from a lot of folks who are getting picked up on their way to court or on their way out of court. So this is a real risk to due process. You know, folks show up to court for a number of reasons and are not guilty until they have seen a judge and have been proven guilty, right? So ICE picking folks up on their way to court is a really big issue for us, and it really creates a fear of individuals doing what they are supposed to do, which is show up to court when they need to, including as witnesses or victims of crime. And we're seeing obviously cruel and inhumane tactics that are hard to keep up on. You know, there was sending people to Guantanamo, Panama, obviously El Salvador, the political targeting, and I think we're seeing lately also threats to some elected officials. This is not something we've seen in Connecticut so far, but we are seeing it on a federal level, right? A judge was arrested last week. So real targeting of individuals who are doing their job and doing the work. We've seen a pretty much nonstop barrage of executive orders. It's hard to keep up with them, but I think the impact of that is actually, it is so hard to keep up with them that people are confused. Even at organizations, we are having, you know, we're getting information every day, and it's really very difficult to figure out from one day to the next, like what is the most important critical information that we need to make sure our community knows, right? I think the emotional and psychological violence on our community is one of the biggest impacts of this administration. And I don't think that this isn't a new issue for people. Undocumented community members have been scared and fearful and unsure about how to interact with state agencies for a long time, including in Democratic administrations. So that is something that we have seen across the board, you know, since I've been doing this work for sure. But I do think there is a real intentionality around making it scarier for people. You know, the rescinding of safe spaces memos, you know, creating this fear around kids going to school or people getting picked up potentially at the hospital or at a place of worship has a really intense psychological impact on our communities. And so obviously this impacts how people are showing up to different things, if they are showing up to things. And I would say this really runs the gamut in terms of like how people interact with this level of fear. We have community members who say, you know, I did this, like I went through this last administration, last Trump administration, like I'm going to show up and do my thing because I have to, because I'm at a place where I know that like I'm connected to people, I'm connected to information and knowledge, and I'm organizing with this committee, and I'm empowered and I'm going to do it. And we have other people who are really nervous about really day-to-day things. So I think that impacts people in different ways, and really getting folks together and organize is one of the most important things that we can do to push back against that. In terms of Make the Roads response, one of our big pushes has been making sure that we're doing Know Your Rights workshops. We do them a lot. We do them in big workshop settings. We do them in our committees in sort of a small workshop. We're also doing a lot more like train the trainers. So our leaders are getting trained on some Know Your Rights stuff, so folks can really replicate this message of what are their rights, what how they can keep themselves or their family safe if possible, which is a really important tool for folks to have. Also building leadership skills in our community. Leadership is one of our kind of biggest areas of impact. We work with community members so that they learn how to talk to other folks about these issues. Maybe they want to talk to their neighbors about it. Maybe they want to have a meeting in their house. Maybe they want to invite somebody to a meeting. Making sure that we are connected to each other, because I strongly believe that connection and building our community is one of the best ways that we are able to fight back against this. Goes right into community organizing. As I said, community organizing is sort of our bread and butter. So our immigrant community members are learning sort of how to fight back both on a statewide level and on a national level. We are connected to other organizations on a national level. So there are some moments where we jump in on larger days of action, or signing on to letters and making sure that our members are involved in that process and know that the impact goes beyond just Hartford or just Connecticut, and that sometimes we do have to act collectively on a national level. We do a lot of in-house legal support and referrals in as much as we can. And this is an issue that Tabitha talked about, Constanza is going to talk about. There are not enough immigration attorneys in the state of Connecticut. There are even fewer who are people who are able to do something pro bono or even low bono, or are really actively engaged with the community or wanting to do deportation defense, right? So we have a small network. We're always looking for more folks to join it, but the ways that we are trying to at least build that out is by hosting legal clinics at our office. So we'll have the attorneys come in for a couple hours. We usually do it quarterly or biannually, depending sort of on capacity, including of the attorneys, to have folks do like rapid immigration consultations, which can be really important for folks just to get some of their basic questions answered. Sometimes they don't have to actually go through a whole, sign a contract with an attorney and have a whole process. Sometimes they just need some quick questions answered, which is what a consult would help for. And in some cases, folks are needing the orientation around like, yes, you qualify for something, and then we go the next step and help refer people out. So it's a way of kind of bridging the gap between, we have a lot of community members who all need legal support, and there are only a few attorneys, and we're trying to sort of make sure that folks get as much representation as possible. And then the last piece is public policy advocacy. And this is one of the areas that Constanza and I work really closely on. We are pushing for a change in our Trust Act, which is a statewide law that separates local law enforcement from immigration or federal law enforcement, and trying to make sure that our folks are not getting picked up at courthouses, trying to make sure that data is not being shared between state agencies and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This is one of our current policy pushes. And then Husky for Immigrants, trying to expand the Husky program so that undocumented folks can qualify. So that's been something that I think we will see this year, the progress that we are able to make. It is not an easy year to push for these changes, but our community members are committed to it. They believe in it, we believe in it, and we will continue to push for positive change in the state of Connecticut. And that's it. Thank you, everybody, for your support, for listening, and I'm happy to take questions after Constanza speaks.
Thank you so much. Here, I will get Constanza.
How are you, everybody?
Hi, Constanza. You want to let me introduce you first, and then
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So Constanza and I actually go way back to Smith Elementary School, where we both had kiddos, which is a very happy memory for me, and I am thrilled to have her today. She is the co-founder and lead organizer of Hartford Deportation Defense. She has represented Hartford Deportation Defense and helped lead statewide social justice coalitions like the Connecticut Immigrant Rights Alliance, Husky for Immigrants, the Connecticut Coalition for Immigrant Freedom, and Connecticut for All. During the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, she helped start the Connecticut Undocu Fund and the Mutual Aid Hartford Network. And those of you who were members of the Giving Circle last year know how excited we were to be able to fund the Black Mamas Giving Circle as part of Mutual Aid Hartford, Since 2024, she's been the organizing director for the statewide Community Labor Faith Coalition, Connecticut for All. She grew up in Mendoza, Argentina, and moved to the US at the age of 17. She is formerly undocumented and a part of a mixed status family. Thank you so much for being here, Jen.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, everybody, for having me. I think I'm able to share my screen a lot, and I'm going to time myself because I ramble. But Hartford Deportation Defense is an organization that is all volunteer led. We just hired our first staff person last year or this year. I don't know. It's been not a long time. And we're very excited because our work has just improved so much. So it's really amazing. And I'll say that with that's something that we're really proud of, but it's not sustainable. I do a lot of work guiding the organization, and it's not my job. And, as much as we need volunteers and we need our movement to be greater than people who are on staff at organizations, we also need a little more staffing capacity. So our work that basically in 2016, we got started as a response to the first Trump administration as a neighborhood support network. And we started holding meetings, house meetings. It's been immigrant-led and neighborhood-led since the beginning. We are really fighting for just peace and dignity and happiness in our lives. And that's evolved during the years in terms of what we've been focusing on and how our structure has developed. Some of the work that I'll talk more about is the statewide policy work that we do, which is Husky for Immigrants and the Trust Act. And then we do some local work around Hartford Public Schools. And we're also engaged in deportation defense and workers' rights in wage theft fights. That is more individuals or group of workers. But it's really important work that we are proud of. Then we also have some emergency funds. Like mutual aid has always been a driving force because we have the volunteer leadership. It's been really important to acknowledge that we live in a world that is constantly attacking immigrant women, undocumented people, and we need to take care of each other. So as we fight together and we build trust in our community, we also have emergency funds to help folks as much as we can. The systemic changes are too great to be able to respond with those type of tools. But we have a legal fund, we have an emergency fund that we've used for, rent and healthcare costs. And then we have a court accompaniment network that I'll talk more about. And we do some food distribution that is connected to food rescue work. And again, it's just supports that we know our people need, our own leaders need, and it just makes our work more viable. And we also have a cultural project called Arte Popular that is led by immigrant women, and I'll share a lot of pictures of that work we're really proud of, and that's more recent. That started, I think, 2023. So, we started, I mentioned, we started Hartford Deportation Defense through house meetings. It's really amazing to even think that it's been about 10 years almost that we've been at this. It's, all of these kids are grown now, but it really has, like, something that I'm really proud of is that the work that, all of these people are still engaged with our work, and are in leadership positions in different capacities. So it's really great to see how our work has strengthened our community. One of the first things that we activated neighbors around was court accompaniment, and that work has had local leaders and has grown immensely. And now we're working on activating all of those volunteers in our advocacy work, because, like I mentioned before, like this mutual aid care work is really critical for us to carry out the systemic change we want. But we do need to fight campaigns in order to get those results, and to, make our care work obsolete, or not the care work obsolete, that's always needed, but with the emergency funds and the court accompaniment, like, we want to be in a world where that's not needed, right? So that's also what we're fighting for. Our leadership team is all women at every level. I wish it wasn't the case. Like, it's something that we want to actually have a little more diversity on, but it is really entirely women doing this work. And through the years, it's been a lot of women in our workers' rights work. Some more men show up, but it's really immigrant mothers who have led this work since the beginning. We have people in our leadership team who have 6 kids, like, and full-time work, and they are the ones leading, like, Husky advocacy and a public school advocacy, and having weekly meetings on various issues. And I just like to highlight that, because I think it's easy for us to see this work and think that it takes extraordinary people to do it, and it's really not the case. Like, people who really don't have time or resources to be leading this work are doing it every day in our community. And it's really, I mean, for me, that's a piece of hope that I, like, remind myself of constantly, because it really, our communities are strengthened, and women in our communities in particular really strong and step into leadership even when we can't. It's crazy. None of us can. None of us have time, and we're all doing it. So in terms of our membership, we've grown immensely through the years. It's almost 10 years, but we have a network of more than 400 immigrant families who are, impacted by the immigration system. We have, out of that, I would say, like, between 50 and 70 active members who are, like, coming to meetings and assemblies and participating in campaigns and different projects. And we have 22 people who have stepped up to leadership, like I had in that slide before, that, like, kind of run our organization in different ways and lead some of our key projects and campaigns. Then, through the years, we've built a really strong ally network that is also organized and structured. And we have, 7 people who lead accompaniment teams, like court accompaniment teams, and also lead our trainings in that work, and all of the coordination that comes out of that. We have 10 leaders that are actually, I think about half of them are immigrants themselves, just not impacted currently by the system. And those leaders are holding meetings and always figuring out, like, how to respond to what the impacted community leaders are prioritizing, to see how we can, really leverage, like, the community power that we've built and activate people in different ways, not just through, like, volunteer hours. So we've started more recently, like being more specific. And I think as a direct result of both having a staff person and also being able to like respond to the crisis that we're in. Like Emmy mentioned, like we've been in this in a state of persecution forever. And what we're living through right now is unprecedented in many ways. So it's really pushed a lot of our volunteers to take leadership roles, to put in a lot more time, which again is just great to see as a product of our long-term work. But it's really how where our power lies. We have a rapid response network and accompaniment network. The accompaniment network is amazing, works really well, and is functioning basically statewide because we've been doing it for so long. Now we're training people in different parts of the state, but our work is actually very local to Hartford area. And that's the only piece. Well, and we do some statewide advocacy, right? But like all of our work, because also capacity wide, like we can't really do more than just be in Hartford. And that's expanded a little bit through like, West Hartford, Manchester, New Britain, East Hartford. I'd say those are the towns where we're like also have members and do active work. Um, the the rapid response work is something that is evolving again because of capacity and because we take our work really seriously. We are actually working with Make the Road to figure out also like what's our joint capacity in Hartford to figure out like what is that we can make available to people. Well, that's 10 minutes. So I'll have we do, as you can imagine, right? Like our work, it's not magic that it's all volunteer, and it's not because people are extraordinary. It's because we have a lot of people doing work and a lot of partners. So this just like some of the community partners that we have. We I think I mentioned a lot of these things, but talking about the deportation defense more in particular, Marie mentioned the Connecticut State Project. We worked with Tabitha and others at the state level to figure out like how to solve this problem of legal needs, and the fact that like we truly, even if we had the money to pay for the private lawyers, we just don't have enough of the legal capacity. So it's not the same kind of problem that we thought we had before, which was like just access to lawyers, right? Like now it's like we're beyond that. Like, yes, we need more immigration lawyers and we need more funding for legal service organizations. And we also need to do some rapid response work. So we pivoted to this pro se model, and we did a lot of consulting with regional and national partners that have done some of this work. In the past, we've been really careful to not step out of our role in the community, and to say like immigration law is complicated and you should definitely speak to a lawyer, and this is a list of trusted lawyers, right? And now we think it's really important, even in the context of pro se, to have lawyers review that work. To also, Connecticut actually has like strict laws in terms of doing work like legal work not as a lawyer. So we've been really careful in the design of that project to avoid any trouble, but to basically be able to respond to the needs of our community. So yeah, I could talk a lot more about that work, but that's something that I wanted to highlight because that is part of what we would want to be like. Some of the coordination work of that project is what we want to fund through some of the support that's potentially coming from Aurora, if you all decide. And I just have a bunch of photos. So if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I don't know if we'll do questions after together. I can also share these slides if people want to look at the photos. I have probably too many photos. Just that our cultural work with Arte Popular has been really amazing, uplifting work, and we really believe in the value of that. not only with our, like our work is serious and hard and weighs on us daily and on our families. And we think also the idea here is to have joy and highlight the contributions of our communities and also preserve our culture because that's, as immigrants, we struggle with that a lot. We want our kids to know where they come from, and we want to enrich our communities with our cultures. I think.
Well, I'm going to be Marie today and start to cry. These photos, I feel like this is such a heavy and hard topic, but those photos are full of that connection, that joy. I thank you so much for bringing so many of them. It's just astounding. So, and I know I would love to hear more about the art project and kind of how that's working. But I also want to make sure that we invite the Giving Circle members, if any of you have questions. Now it's your chance for Constanza or Emmy.
I thank you, Constanza and Emmy, so much for your amazing work. Really incredible, inspiring. And Constanza, I noticed that the hotline, the rapid response hotline, is going to be coming online soon. And will that be staffed with volunteers who've been trained somehow, or how will that work?
Yeah, so we've done a couple of trainings already. Like I said, it's something that we are working with Make the Road on, and it's something that we kind of have, I would say about like 70% there. But we will probably do a soft launch to test the system, like make sure that all the volunteers know their roles well, and it'll take some like what's the word, like drills to really put it out before we put it out in the community. Because I think some context for that, at least on our end, is that we had a hotline back in 2016, but we were brand new and we were just making connections. And something that we found was that, people didn't necessarily trust us yet, or even though, our own community, like our own families were people who are running it, it's still, it's sensitive things that people aren't just gonna call you because you said you would help, right? Like, so we still had it, but it didn't really take off. I think in the position that we're in now, 9 years later, or how many years? 9 years since 2016. But like, we've been, we have trust in the community and we are known. So I know that we're going to get calls, like, and I just don't want to put something out where, I want to make sure to test it. And that's why we've been slow in activating it.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed that you're coordinating that with Emmy. Sorry. Props to both.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment. So I'm sorry because I joined late, but when the work's really impressive. What is also really impressive to me is watching two nonprofits come together, because honestly, coming here, I moved here from out of state a couple of years ago, and everything is so siloed in Connecticut, and it is not helpful. There is so much work that can be done together. So I really just want to highlight that as something that I think is really important in this time of especially, but in general, right? We can all move forward the work we do. If we work together, we can move it forward much faster than we can trying to compete with each other. So props to both of you for that. Thank you.
I appreciate that comment, Joanne. I think that especially in situations like this, there's this push to like differentiate our work and make sure people know what we're doing differently, which we do lots of things differently, right? But I actually think the work that intersects is really powerful, and we need so much more of that. So I appreciate you lifting that up.
Yeah,
Thanks
and
so
one
much.
of the values we've had since the beginning, and it's something we've talked a lot about with our leaders, is collaboration. And we really like, I mean, it's crazy to think actually that this is extraordinary because the systems that we're working against are giant and powerful, right? So like when you think of nonprofit work being siloed, it's really delusional to think that a single nonprofit is going to solve poverty or homelessness, or right, like it's just ridiculous, right? So I think in the immigrant rights movement we are very clear on that, and it has not been smooth through all the work that we've done together. But, in times of crisis, there's no hesitation because we know what we're what we're working up against. Like, there's no way that we can keep separate, and it'd be ridiculous. I think I'm really proud of the fact that, like, especially with Make the Road, with Connecticut Students for a Dream, we have connection. Like, we're always in communication, helping each other. And that actually makes our advocacy work very strong because we are constantly in conversation and negotiation. So we know each other's organizations really well. And it allows us to have like really strong unity when we come to leaders. Like I said, it's not easy work, it takes work. We meet weekly for these coalition leadership, orientations and strategy conversations, but it is that, and it is something to be proud of.
Thank you so much. Rachel.
Hi. Well, Constanza, I know you said you were talking about how, this is just regular people doing this work, but I do just want to say that what you do is incredible. And I know you are a person and not a super person, but what you're doing all the time with the fight for HPS and all the organizing is so valuable and incredible and just really, really appreciated. I just finished writing my testimony for the mayor because one of your people called me last night, so my question actually relates to sort of what you were just talking about of working with different organizations. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Hartford Deportation Defense, and I don't know about Make the Road, are especially focused on Latina immigrants. And are there immigrants from other communities, whether Caribbean, African, East Asian, South Asian, who you're also working with, or are there organizations that are more focused on them that you're also working with?
I can start. I'll say for us, being in Hartford, the majority of immigrants in Hartford are Jamaican, right? Like, it's something that we're super hyper conscious of. And I'd say through the years, we've done like different levels of collaborating, and there's, like reasons actually that like there's certain folks that we've worked with that are not focused on advocacy work. So it might not, those partnerships might be more visible when we do like cultural things. And I think, there is like a real need to organize more in those communities, like to have actual like organizing plans to say, like, the same way that we built up the network that we have in the Latino community, they can be built up in other communities. But to the best of our ability, we are connecting to the folks that we know locally. And I think, for example, the HPS work is one of those things that, like, where we meet and then we hope that we can get folks more involved in the immigration advocacy out of that, right? Like, Housekeep for Immigrants has been interesting because I think we're also heavily represented in the Latino community, but that's, not because that's the need. It's more because of where the organizing efforts of our organizations have been focused. But I know Make the Road is actually doing really cool stuff, at least in Bridgeport, to outside of the Latino community.
Yeah. I think this is a challenge and one that we've been thinking about for a while. We have had and I don't know that we've made like great inroads on it either. We've had sort of like a trickling of immigrants from non-Spanish speaking communities, right? We've had some really active members from Barbados and Haiti, some Brazilian folks. I think the challenge, the largest and most apparent challenge is language, because so much of our work is bilingual English Spanish, that anybody who doesn't feel sort of comfortable in those two languages, it's a challenge, right? And one that we haven't been able to figure out how to address. I think one of the things that's been interesting to us has been seeing actually the tenant organizing work has brought together it's probably the most diverse of our committees. And I mean, one of the reasons is because everybody deals with abusive landlords and tenant issues. If you are low income, working class, that's sort of across the board. We have Black, we have Puerto Rican, we have immigrant, we have non-Spanish speaking immigrant folks in those committees. And that's been an interesting space to sort of see, because it's not targeted, in a similar way as like the Husky campaign or the Trust Act campaign at our immigrant communities. It's actually brought a more diverse group together. But yeah, I think that we both recognize it and see it as one of the ways that we would like to grow. And we have made some communication and we've had some like workshops and meetings with churches that serve different populations in both Bridgeport and Hartford. And it's sort of like we'll see how that grows in the future.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ellen? Had your hand up. Perfect.
Had to unmute myself. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
So it sounds like Constanza specifically, how do you pay for a staff member? Like you could get maybe enough money to pay, from us to pay for a, 6 months or a year, but how do you have an ongoing staff member?
Great question. We have grants. So like the reason we were able to, and we actually just started getting grants in the last, since COVID. Basically during COVID, we were like, okay, we need like some real response. Even in our emergency funds, like we had a grant for like housing assistant, like things like that. And then we're like, okay, maybe there's something to this thing. And we started getting more recognized for our advocacy work that we were doing and being able to apply for some grants relating to that. But I think that goes hand in hand too with not having like a development person or like, staff capacity. But something really exciting that we have that's new is a fundraising committee. So we are going to be a lot more intentional about applying. And one of our goals is to be able to get funding for a second staff person. We don't have ambitions of like being statewide or even in other places than the Hartford region. So it's more like, could we get someone to organize in the Jamaican community, in the Brazilian community? That's like my dreams. And then, some operation support.
Right. Oh, okay. Obviously, you think about these things, but thank you.
Thanks so much. Does anyone else have any other questions? I know, Jenny, Jenny's got to jump to a New Haven meeting, so she's gonna have to scoot. But we're actually I'm always amazed that it's 12:58. Like you guys, we were good. We did this run of show, so that was amazing, and I think everyone got their questions answered. I do have one. Oh, thanks, Chloe. So yeah, in the respect of time, I want to thank everybody for logging in. There will be a recording if you want to share it with your groups. And we really appreciate your time, and it's been great partnering with you both, and I can't wait to continue this. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We will see you soon. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.